You're now listening to the Pitchside Peregrines podcast, your home for all things Athletic Club Boise.
All right, everybody. Before we get into today's episode, quick shout out to KJO Insurance, the first sponsor of the Pitchside Peregrines podcast. Look, insurance premiums suck, but your coverage doesn't have to. They know Idaho and the Pacific Northwest, and they'll actually find you a deal that makes sense. DM them on Instagram at KJO Insurance with Pitchside, or call 208-883-4800 and tell them Kyle and Elias sent you. All right, let's talk some AC Boise. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Pitchside Peregrines podcast. This is a Scouting Our Prey episode where we like to go through the history and a lot of the recent form of their opponents this upcoming weekend. And we do have a special guest this time around. We have Jerry from the Cosmos Country podcast, as we are going to be facing the New York Cosmos in New Jersey this weekend. So Jerry, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Kyle, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. I feel like prey as I just came home from the Westchester game, in which we dropped another one 3-0 at their place. The one thing I will say is it's my second time there, and I really love the environment and the vibe, from the place. It was a good environment, a good environment for USL, two supporters groups going at it. And, hopefully this becomes a local rivalry, but tonight, tough result, tough drive home, which is, thank God, only about 45 minutes for me. So not too bad. Thanks for having me.
No. And thank you I know it's a late night for you guys. You guys are about 10:30 right now. So, and especially, not in the best of spirits again after the loss. Would you guys consider a derby technically? I mean, it's.
Again, it's only the second meeting. The first meeting was the USL Cup. In which the Cosmos won 3-2 on a late goal. Very, very electrifying environment that night. So I think we're on to something. There's a little back and forth on social media, which is good for the game, good for both clubs, and as you know, good for the league. So
absolutely. You need a little bit of fire behind the fan bases. I'm not sure how, the leagues have different podcasts, or not podcast groups, but like Discord groups and people talking back and forth. And whoever the Westchester guy was on the Discord, and some Cosmos fans, they've had some pretty good conversations. We'll put it
absolutely.
On the Discord. So
absolutely.
You like to see that passion there. So no, that's a good thing. Unfortunate about the result. What is the distance between stadiums? I know Westchester's in Mount Vernon, I think, is a town in
Westchester
New York.
is in Mount Vernon, which is in Westchester County, New York.
Yeah.
The Cosmos are in Patterson, which is Passaic County. So you're looking at, call it conservative, 45 minutes to an hour. You could push it probably closer to 45, but it's not too far.
Yeah, no.
To put it in perspective, Hinchcliffe, where the Cosmos play, is about 9.5 from my house, and I'm about 22, 23 miles from Mount Vernon.
Okay. Got it. Okay. See, then I've learned a lot about geography just looking up and researching these teams. So it's good. I'm getting the picture in my head of where everyone's at. For the United States, that's Derby. Like, you guys are 45 minutes to your closest away game. Our closest away game is 8 hours to Spokane.
Wow.
Spokane, Washington. We'll see when Sporting Cascades is supposed to come in next year. It's about 8 hours too. So we'll have two really close for Idaho. So no, that is,
interesting.
Unfortunate result for you guys tonight, but I'm sure you guys, again, it's your first season kind of back.
Correct.
Being a Phoenix club, I guess. And that's part of the history of the Cosmos. Like, you are by far the only, and I think you guys are still a global brand. Like, people know who the Cosmos are. You've had two of the top 10 players of all time played for the Cosmos in Pele and Franz Beckenbauer. So, I mean,
correct.
What
World Cup champions?
Yeah, so obviously, again, we had spoken about, I think a history lesson on the Cosmos could take an hour plus. So what do you think are the biggest, for people who don't know who the Cosmos are as a whole across their whole history? What especially Idahoans, who we don't have a whole lot of formal professional soccer history here. What do we need to know about the New York Cosmos?
Well, I think, the history is always important. And I think Just to take it in steps, the club has an interesting story. At times it's a little sad because, like we were talking before we came on, it's our third iteration. So our first iteration was 71, folded in the mid 80s. Then we came back in 2013. The reason why it folded, in the 80s was the old NASL came on very, very quickly. Money, 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 money. It was an interesting time. They were getting them on TV. They finally got them on TV. There used to be commercials. I remember this as a kid. In the middle of a match, there would be a commercial. And there's a lot of things that happened. The league was growing too fast. The Cosmos were ahead. They were spending money. Steve Ross, was the owner. They had a lot of money in Time Warner, and there was just a lot of money being spent, and the rest of the league couldn't compete. And eventually, the league just imploded, unfortunately. But I think if you look at, there's a lot of documentaries out there about that old NASL, and they really did put soccer on the map in the United States. It was, it got the country juiced, electrified, and again, it was a good start. Unfortunately, it didn't, it crashed, and then we had the MLS come on in 96. But I think a lot of those old NASL clubs, really planted seeds that did last even long after the league folded. Now, for the Cosmos, like you said, I mean, it was legendary, Pele, Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto, Giorgio Canaglia. Then you had a guy who I absolutely loved in Ricky Davis, who was an American-born player who there really was no U.S. men's national team during this time. Okay, and again, if he played in a generation, if you will, or in an era like now where the U.S. national team is much better, he would be a marquee name, in our country. You had Stevie Hunt, you had a lot of different players, Eskandarian Birkenmeyer, Shep Messing, legendary players. And, it was awesome to see. I was, like I was telling you, I saw the tail end of that. So this came on the mayhem, the pandemonium was when they had to leave Yankee Stadium to go to a larger venue, which was Giant Stadium, which holds 77,000. Okay. And so you're looking at the years like 77 to like the early 80s, where they were in, many, many soccer bowls. They won a few soccer bowls, but I don't want to go too far into that because
no, I love this sort of stuff.
This is a USL format, but just to put it in perspective,
yeah,
in 1977, you had the Mets, you had the Yankees. The Mets were pretty bad. The New York Yankees went on to win the World Series. The Cosmos were outdrawing both of those teams combined.
That's wild to think about.
That is a crazy, really a crazy concept if you really think about it. And, now the history will always come forward with the club. It came to the second iteration where Carlos Alberto, family members of Giorgio Canaglia, were around, during the second iteration. The second iteration came on again, coincidentally, not the big name players, but they had a lot of talent. You had Marco Senna, who was from La Liga. You had Raul, who was, legendary player, Real Madrid, AC Milan. And, it started in Hofstra, again, soccer bowl. The current CEO, Eric Stover of the club now, was the CEO back then. And him and I recently were chatting. The second iteration, the payroll for the second iteration is over 5 times what the payroll of the club is today. And that was in 2013. So that first, and I think it's important to really note this, because the first iteration, star players, a lot of money, a lot of money, a lot of money. Second iteration, a lot of money, quality players, maybe not the household names, right? But a lot of quality players that were, I would say, like, for example, there's a player, Reversio. He was a center back. He was a Brazilian center back. He could have played in MLS at that time. He was paid probably what he would have been paid in MLS. So you had a lot of players like that. Now you get to the third iteration, and I think there's a lot of fans. You have the true Cosmos supporters from the past, but a lot of people, I think there's not a lot of people, but I think there's a segment of the population that's like, well, wait a minute, this is the New York Cosmos. Where are the names? What's going on here? And they're taking a completely different route where they're making this what a USL side is, which is trying to get that young local talent sprinkled in with a few USL veterans. And I use that word loosely. And that's kind of, where we are today. So I think current players, I think, do feel, whether they admit it or not, some do, some don't, that there is this, informal pressure of putting on that jersey because it is a historic brand. It's a historic club. I think it's the most historic club, in the United States for a lot of different reasons. And I think, so far this year, it's interesting because the first iteration, they started in Hofstra. They went to Yankee Stadium. Okay. They actually played in Randall's Island, which was Pele's first game, I believe, in 75. Then they were in Yankee Stadium. Then they were in Giant Stadium. Then they played in the Brendan Byrne Arena when they ended as an indoor team. Then they come back the second time. They started Hofstra. They went to Brooklyn, where the Brooklyn Cyclones played. So it was a baseball soccer field. Okay. Yep. Then after that, then after that, they bounced around Mitchell Field. There was a few different facilities. And now here it is, right? We don't have the stars in iteration 3, but we do have one thing that was always very difficult for the first 2 iterations. We have a stadium. We have a beautiful, historic, restored, historic venue that the history there is deep and rich in the Negro League Baseball League. Larry Doby played there, Hall of Famer, Cleveland Indian, and the place was a complete disaster. There was, graffiti, property damage, graffiti. I think there was a tree that was growing out of home plate or second base.
Oh, man.
They did an absolute job. So now the building has landmark status. So right now you have the Cosmos, you have the New Jersey Jackals, which is an independent baseball. There's a professional female football team that uses it. And then the Patterson school system uses the field as well. They've also used the field for World Cup watch parties, awesome. as of recent times. So it's funny because you look at the starting point now, and the starting point is we have a venue that we control because when they were in Hofstra in the second iteration, Hofstra control. So there would be times where you'd be like, well, wait a minute, I have tickets for 2 weeks from now, a Wednesday night. Oh, we're moving that game because Hofstra needs it. So now you have your own venue, from day one. The city of Patterson has embraced, I think I would be remiss if I didn't miss it. Patterson's had some challenges over the years, as many urban East Coast cities have had. One of the biggest challenges that they have, is a lot of corruption in the municipal government level. Now they finally have a mayor who just won re-election, Andre Saya, who is, Mr. Patterson, beats the chest, somebody that the city needed. And, the city is making progress on a daily basis. It's improving. So now you have a stadium in place, beautiful stadium that's been restored. Now the city, which is great about this, the city now is focusing on developing the area. And now one of the biggest attractions right next to the stadium is the Patterson Falls, which was really made popular in, I think, 2 or 3 Sopranos episodes where people were actually thrown over into the falls. But that's a whole nother story. So what they're doing it's really something to look at.
Yeah, interesting.
So what they're doing in the Patterson Falls, they have a gentleman that's in charge of kind of expediting the project. There's going to be more parking, which would help out the stadium. But one of the first attractions is going to be a new restaurant with rooftop dining where you'll be able to see into the stadium, into the falls, and over into the New York City skyline.
Interesting.
So
That's
so
cool.
that's like and I think it's important where we start with the club today
Mm-hmm.
with the stadium, because I think people are like, oh, like there's a lot of New Yorkers, and I have good relationships with a lot of Cosmos fans from New York. They don't want to make the trip. Some do it reluctantly. Some have stayed away. To be honest with you, tonight the supporters turnout in Westchester was very, very good. They did a very, very good job. And again, some of those people just are not willing, which I understand. There's some distance to go into New Jersey. It's, coming from New York, it's not the easiest of places to get to, per
Mm-hmm.
se. That's like the general consensus. If someone like me, I always make the joke where I live, it seems I can be anywhere in North Jersey, either multiple highways or even local roads. So I can actually get to Patterson to the stadium without getting on a highway if I so choose. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think there's a faction of the fan base that's a little disappointed that they went into New Jersey. But again, to be fair, this is nothing that is new for the club. They did that in iteration 1. Iteration 2, they made it known that they were going to try to stick to those New York roots. And, there's a lot of things that were being laid. The foundation was being laid, and it kind of went awry. And the one thing that I'll mention, and I actually at tonight's game, I was online and I overheard somebody talking about this. A lot of people don't know this, where when the Cosmos came back in 2013, they were very aggressive. They were very aggressive in their promotion, in their spending. Success came very, very quickly. One of the projects that they had was the Belmont project, which was building their own stadium, okay, which was going to have a museum. And that's where the New York Islanders currently play.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
that kind of went sideways with things. So that was the plan, so like the New York faction, like, and again, it was going to be something to see. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. So fast forward now, sticking with current times in iteration 3, New York Cosmos playing Patterson, New Jersey. We have our own stadium. It's a historic venue. It holds, about 7 plus. The city is going through some changes. The attendance has been spotty, very inconsistent in our first year. And, again, the leadership, you have Eric Stover, who has a very interesting background. He was with the Red Bulls. He was very integral in playing. He played a pivotal role in getting the Red Bulls out of Giant Stadium, coincidentally, to get their own soccer-specific stadium. Then he parted ways. He resurfaced with the Cosmos in iteration 2. Now he's back in iteration 3. Bio Adolfo Wilson is the owner of the Cosmos. Him and Eric were very critical. Played a very critical role, in the restoration of the stadium. Mr. Wilson also owns the Jackals. Both of them are always there on game day. Very,
awesome.
very two big people person. They're very big people, people persons, if you will, and very, very charismatic. Very accommodating to fans. So Mr. Wilson has a history of he was a Patterson resident at one time.
Okay.
And so his investment is, I would say, is a little bit of personal. Eric came in, and Eric brought in Giuseppe Rossi,
Okay.
who is
Yeah.
one of the most legendary players in all of the United States, let alone the state of New Jersey. Very well known in North Jersey. Giuseppe Rossi brought in Davide Corti, who was our manager, a little Italian connection. He's from the Milan system, coached the Milan women. He's been around, but they have history. So that's where we are as far as, our managerial staff. Giuseppe is really the de facto head of soccer. Head scout is Jose Angulo. He was a Tampa Bay Rowdies legend. He played in USL for quite some time as well. So he's the head scout. And that's kind of where we are. Our roster does have some local talent. one of the first players that they brought in was Sebastian Guinzotti, who also played a very critical role in iteration 2. He's the only player. He's the only player on the roster now that was around for any previous Cosmos years, if you will. So that's kind of where we are. So I would say, I covered the stadium. I covered the city, if you will. It's nice to see the mayor of Patterson so involved in the club. I've been to numerous press conferences where he's been there. He's also at most of the games. I think what we're seeing is on our podcast, Jimmy and I, we had one of the supporters leaders, and he said something to me, and this was before the year, and I still haven't forgot this. He said, for the supporters, we're kind of in a rebuilding year because the last iteration, life goes on. People get married, people get older, people move, people get new jobs, people move away from the club for whatever reason. So they're still building their numbers. They have a Jersey faction now, of course. So there's multiple supporters groups, involved with they refer to themselves as the 5 points. So there's multiple supporters groups under that. They're in a rebuild, and it's hard to talk about the team being new and really an expansion team, because that's what they are, with such a rich history. And I think that's become a little bit of an issue because they're really focusing on becoming, known in the Patterson community, going grassroots, which they really didn't do in their previous times. And it's an evolving process. So one of the things in Patterson is one of the hugest communities for soccer is the Peruvian community. So this Saturday, they're having Peruvian night. One of the employees that we had on our podcast is Peruvian. They're wearing a special training kit. It's like a red and white, really cool. And it's Peruvian night. There's actually going to be a female, a Peruvian league game early on in the day. So it's kind of like a double header. So, those are the things, like when you talk about the new Cosmos in this USL, those are things that they didn't have to do. In iteration 2, I was walking into Hofstra, getting my ticket swiped and getting a Giorgio Canaglia wristband, getting a Pele poster, getting a Pele t-shirt, getting a Raul and Marco Senna t-shirt. This is completely different in their approach. And the last time I had Eric Stover on, the current CEO, he said something very interesting. He said, I don't want the fans to think we're not a big club. He said, we're still going to be a big club. He envisions a period of maybe like 4 years from now. So maybe in year 5, where they can go out, where they have that groundwork, that foundation laid, and still be able to sign a big player. So that's something that I have in the back of my mind.
Yeah, then I think you'd mentioned something about the players kind of have this kind of the shirt weighs something. It that can work in your favor as well. Where after you kind of help build this foundation as a grassroots club, that for some players it may feel like chainmail, but for other players that's an attraction. That's New York. That they think of those legends that have played for the Cosmos. So that can be something that plays. But the fact that it seems like this ownership is doing such a good job of really investing in that community and making it local, like you said, they're tapping into the Peruvian community that's there in Patterson. That seems like you said, they haven't had to do that before, and it seems like at the USL level, in order to succeed, that's what you have to do, because it's just kind of acknowledging where you are in the moment. It doesn't mean you can't go somewhere with it. It doesn't mean that, obviously with the promotion and relegation that's coming, who knows that in 5 years, the Cosmos aren't in the USL Premier competing. We'll see what happens with competing MLS. Who knows? But it's still, there's still so much opportunity to grow that grassroots support, and it sounds like that ownership is really committed to doing that within this new USL structure. So again, performances on the field may not reflect the off-field work that's happening right now doesn't mean it's not going to. There's so many one-year contracts. Teams change so quickly in the USL. So, hey,
Correct.
not great results this year. Hey, next year we have 11 new players. We have 13 new
Right.
players. Who knows what it's going to look like? But man, the history of the Cosmos is just so legendary.
It's overpowering,
yeah, it
and
is. It's
like
crazy.
sometimes you need like certain reminders, and I had one 3 games ago where I went to the game with my wife, and before the game in the stadium, they have a museum, and the museum is dedicated basically to Negro League baseball and everything that kind of happened in that stadium over the years. So anyway, and it's run by Montclair University.
Oh, cool.
They decided because of the World Cup, they did a nice exhibit. Cosmos in the Cup. The Cosmos have had 25 players appear in the World Cup. And if you really think about that, that's an American team that's had 25 players, and some of the countries like aren't even around anymore. So like one is Yugoslavia, which is like I think a gazillion countries now.
Yeah.
But coincidentally, one of the current members of the U.S. men's national team, fun fact, was on that list, who is Haji Wright, because Giovanni Savarese found him as a 17-year-old, and he had a brief stint in iteration 2 with the Cosmos. I believe he was 17 at the time. So,
wow.
Fun fact there.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, the exhibit has who was in the World Cup, and then you're talking about historic merchandise, jerseys and different things. I shouldn't say merchandise; it wasn't for sale, but on display, Pele lunchbox, and just different items is absolutely awesome. And again, 25 players from an American club, to appear, in the World Cup is unbelievable.
I mean, there's MLS clubs who can't claim that.
Correct.
Now, the MLS clubs that have probably been around for a decade and
Correct.
plus more. So no, that's incredibly impressive. That is, again, the weight that comes with the Cosmos and the legends that have played there. And it sounds like one thing that plagues USL teams is stadiums. Stadiums are such, we're lucky enough to where, does the team own our stadium? No, but we have a 25 or 50-year lease that if Boise so chooses, it will just automatically renew. That is our stadium. That is AC Boise Stadium for the foreseeable future. And it sounds like you guys have a very similar situation with Hinchcliffe. Is that correct? Hinchcliffe Stadium?
That's correct.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. So, and it sounds like, it doesn't sound like the Cosmos own it, but it sounds like it's maybe a similar situation as Boise has, where it's like the lease is just there. So it's something you guys get to use, and it sounds like the money is being invested, and it sounds like the capacity is in a good spot too. It sounds like it's in a reasonable spot. So no, it sounds like there's, again, kind of going back to the off-field work that's being put in by your leadership group. Sounds like they're laying the foundation, because yes, the Cosmos have been around a long time, but it's been intermittent. So it's like,
correct.
I think it's trying to make this iteration the most sustainable. And I think to make that sustainable,
that's the right word. Correct.
It can't be all flash. It can't be all flash, and it can't be all, like you said. You said the second iteration, the wages were more than the current team now, and that was 13, 14 years ago. So, yeah, it seems like the Cosmos are still the legends that they always have been, but now they're just channeling it in a more sustainable way. And the names, you never know, the names will come, as the USL continues to grow in its stature. I mean, even at the USL Championship, you have ex-Canadian national team players, you have ex-US men's national team players at the USL Championship level. So who's not to say that you get Haji Wright at 34, coming back to the Cosmos? I think that would be awesome. And again, maybe that's the US stereotype of it. It's like, oh, we're still, just the retirement league. But it's like, what? For the USL, that's okay. That's, for it's a young league. It still has a long ways to go. So, man, the context you're able to give this team is incredibly I love history, so it's just I love
Yeah, I love
hearing
it.
all
Yeah, I
this
could
stuff.
talk about this all day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So, and I know a lot of our listeners, I had to ask, is like, hey, who do people want to hear about? You guys do have an ex-AC Boise player on your roster. That's Javi Garcia. He hasn't been there too long. I know he started a few games. Is he playing much, or is he, he ended up on the bench for Boise? I don't even think he started a game. He did. He's a penalty specialist, so he actually came on against Las Vegas Lights in the USL Cup, and he saved 2 or 3 penalties in the shootout, which we won. So that's his thing. But how's he done for you guys?
So we had him on the podcast. Great guest. Our goalkeeping situation has been very interesting, where we started with Tristan Stefani, who's been starting lately. He started. We went with Derek Chan, who has a little bit more experience. Garcia came in, a little bit of fanfare. He had a few starts. Chan was injured. Stefani seemed like he was the odd man out, but playing very, very well lately. Made 2 really nice saves tonight. So right now I would say, there was a point where, our results were very frustrating because we were just conceding so many soft goals. And if you judge the performance of a 90-minute match, it was really 2 or 3 short spells that were just doing us in. So, the back line has been playing better up until tonight. Tonight I just felt they were just flat, against Westchester. I was looking for them to take the 3 points, obviously. But the last 3 matches, we saw a little bit of a turnaround, and maybe this is the correlation. But Stefani's been playing well, these last few matches, and shifting off the goalkeeper situation. One of the players that we added was very, very exciting is Siobhan Marsh, who did not play tonight. He was injured. But previously, you talk about somebody that came on, has made an impact, right away. We've had him on the podcast, the play
Awesome.
really quick. The players, we've had so many players on the podcast, and they've all been great with us. The team has been great with us, making these guys available, for the podcast. The team is working with us. So coincidentally tonight, they were a little flat. I thought Siobhan was in the last 3 matches. He gave a little bit more juice. It seems things were electric with him in there. And now coincidentally, he's not in there tonight, and we just seemed a little flat. But the goalkeeping situation, there was a situation where our goalkeeping coach, was on the roster. He's actually a player coach, which seems to be a little bit of an issue in the USL. I mean, what issue is, it's more common than not, I guess. Just happened with Bill Hamid in
I saw that. That's crazy.
Yes,
Yeah.
Corpus Christi, excuse me. So, the lineup has been, juggled around a little bit. Guinzotti has been a mainstay in there. He's the captain. Like I said, he was, from the second iteration, he's the only guy. Ajmir Spengler, one of the most exciting and dynamic players in the league on our back. I mean, he's a center mid, attacking mid. Anderson Holt has been, very solid as a center back. They got Jordan Chavez, a little bit, later than some of the other players, toward maybe like the first or second week he came in. He's been a mainstay back there. Nesta Cabrera has been a mainstay. Rutgers product. Nick Zalanka, he's been starting on and off. He's a local product out of Wallington, which is right in my backyard. There's been a few Jersey guys. Tino Puentes, is a Jersey guy. He's been really a second half sub, and then there's been, some, interesting, Darren Sadul. He's a little bit older. He's been around. He's been a center mid. So the lineup has gone under construction, and I would say, when we're full throttle and healthy, you're looking at Guinzotti up top, Spengler kind of playing behind him. Lamine he's known by Laos as one wing and Siobhan Marsh as another wing. And to be honest with you, if we had those 4 guys in the lineup from the beginning of the year, things might, the record might look a little bit different and we might be a little bit higher, in the table. So,
got it.
Nick Mendonca's done a great job. He's another midfielder. He's done a great job as well, and, Morabito's got, Maximo Morabito's got a little more playing time lately. And, things have been, like I said, I think it's hard because of the history to say, hey, this is our first year in the league, and it's a work in progress. Do I think the team, thinks that, they were going to be last in the table at this point? No, I don't. But, realistically, if you look at the beginning of the year, after those first few results, I think most of us thought, at this time we would be in playoff contention. And, it's going to be hard to make up the ground, that has to be made up. One of the other players who I thought did pretty good tonight, very exciting player, is Frankie Lukovic. Okay. He was signed with Siobhan Marsh. So coincidentally, and I think this is worth noting, is if you look at the roster coming into the year, the age of the roster, there was quite a few guys that this was their first pro contract. Then you look at the season moving on, if you will, bringing in Laos, Garcia, Marsh. Those guys are a little bit older. They have a little bit more experience in USL. So I kind of found that interesting. Is that something that they didn't really account for? Like, hey, listen, we're going to come out very, very young. And maybe, we needed to really integrate a little bit more veteran presence here. That's what's kind of happening, with these last few signings, if you will. So that's a quick overview. I mean, there's been a few other guys, that have been in and out of the starting lineup. But I would say if you're looking at somebody who's very, very exciting with on the ball, off the ball, with a very high work rate, it's going to be Ajmir Spengler. Very shifty player. Guinzotti's been around the block, in the USL. And, hopefully for you guys, you'll get to see that, we do have some players that can really attack the wide areas, if they're healthy. And, listen, Saturday is going to be a very, very, very difficult match for us. I believe you guys are 5th in the table.
Yep, we're sitting 5th right now. Yeah.
In 5th right now. You guys are having a good year. And again, the one thing that this Cosmos side has proven all year is beginning of the year, put a few games together, big drought, and we did a few games together. And I'm hoping that tonight is just going to be, a 1-game misfire, because it seems that things have come in bunches. There's been positives in bunches. There's been negatives in bunches. Back to some positives, back to negatives. The bottom line is the team hasn't been consistent, in their attack. Scoring goals has been very challenging. Okay. And ultimately, there's been quite a few defensive lapses, that stem from the play of the goalkeeper. Pick one, if you will. They've all had kind of their moments at times. And, now it seems Stefani, it'll be interesting. I thought he did a good job tonight. I think he'll start on Saturday if I had to, put a wager on that. And again, Saturday, coming into tonight, I thought, we were going to have a positive result. Saturday is going to be very difficult. It's at home. The team has not performed very, very well, on the road. And why this makes it very difficult, I don't want to say Saturday's a must win if you want to get any momentum, but in the month of August, they have quite a few road games, which could really cause a very bleak, September and October. But, it is what it is. Yeah. Like I said, and I know people don't want to hear this from my perspective, I'm still in the honeymoon stage of us being back.
Yeah. That's understandable.
Yeah. I mean, because I thought, when they wound up in Mitchell Field and not technically, they were Cosmos B. I was driving out to Mitchell Field, okay, and they were Cosmos B. And when that kind of folded, Carlos Mendez was the manager who also played. When that folded, I was like, man, this is the second time the club's folding. You're never going to see this again. Fast forward, Jimmy and I are doing a podcast under another name. I said, you know what? Let's delve. We were really going into New York Giants college basketball. I said, let's start delving into soccer. I said, let's get Eric Stover on.
Yeah.
I knew at the time, his resume, but what I didn't realize, and that's what kind of drew me to him, is in our local paper, there was an article that Eric was involved in a project of basically redoing, okay, rebuilding is the right word, right? Rebuilding the stadium in Patterson Hinchcliffe, okay, and that at the time they were going to be known as North Jersey Pro. That was the name. It was going to be a professional soccer team. We had Eric on. He talked about, we covered his time at Red Bull. He talked about his time at the Cosmos, the second iteration. And then he was very passionate in talking about how he was involved in basically restoring Hinchcliffe, that as of now, their team has no name. It's known as North Jersey Pro. There'll be professional soccer at the stadium. One day I woke up, I'll never forget this. My son texted me. He was like, Dad, the Cosmos are back. I'm like, what do you mean? And sure enough, North Jersey Pro turned into the Cosmos.
That's the way it goes. That's funny. He must have had a vision deep down. I'm sure he wanted to bring back the Cosmos name for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's
there was always rumors that,
yeah.
and it's probably a bad rumor. There was always a rumor that somehow the Red Bulls were going to rebrand and become the Cosmos, but I never believed that. There was, because there's that whole MLS,
And the Red Bull brand as a whole too, kind of maybe not as bad here, but in Europe especially, people are not big fans. So
correct,
yeah.
right?
No, that is interesting, and
there's a lot. There's a lot on.
There's so much to go through there.
There's a lot to fight on there.
Man, yeah, there really is. Yeah, there really is so much to go into there. But the fact that I really, again, kind of going into the grassroots part of that, the ownership and that team that you're talking about there also reflects in your roster. You talked about how young your guys are.
Correct.
It's kind of, Boise doesn't have many young guys. We have a couple. I think we
Right.
have 3 or 4 straight out of college, but we have a lot of USL Championship guys who've taken a step down, or some good US League One veterans that have come into Boise. So I think you guys, again, you're building something there from the ground up. You're building something from the ground up in a sustainable way. So yeah, let's get those college kids that first contract, and let's try to sprinkle in some good veterans. And so I think there's obviously some people that we have to worry about, because Boise's not a good away team either. We've looked better, but we try to make home our fortress a little bit. And we went to Madison the other day, and I mean 5-1 in Madison. So we've had our share of howlers away from home. We did actually we did beat Westchester in Mount Vernon a couple weeks ago. So at least we have a win on the East Coast under our belt already. So hopefully we can carry that momentum in. But it sounds like it's going to be something different. It's gonna be a different feeling going there and playing you guys in this new stadium. Hopefully Boise. I'm not sure how many Boise fans are in New York, but you never know.
You never know.
You never know. People hear Boise and they think the blue turf. Who knows? Maybe they'll come out and check it out. But
that's true.
Yeah, you never know. But I could listen to you talk about the history of the NASL and the Cosmos for a heck of a lot longer than a podcast episode. But yeah, there's a lot to go through there, and there's definitely some players that we want to keep an eye on. Sounds like we're not going to see Javi start, which is a bummer. I know he made some connections here in Boise, and people really did like him on a personal level. We didn't
very
get to
likable
see him.
guy.
Yeah,
that's
everything I've heard. We weren't able to speak with him, but again, he made some good connections here, and so, and yeah, who knows? Maybe there's some maybe there's some players. It's funny, again, with the USL, there's so many 1-year contracts. Who knows? Maybe there's got a couple players that are playing for Boise or for you guys that and they swap and they end up on the Cosmos next year. So no, and it's just good to build that familiarity. And it sounds like that'd be a cool stadium to come out and check out. Not many away days for Idahoans, that's for sure. That's a long trip. Yeah, that's a long trip. I don't think we have a direct flight from Boise, Idaho to New York City, unfortunately. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool to get out there and check things out. Let's see. I want to check and see some people if they wanted us to ask you anything else, but everyone just wanted to hear about Hobby. But that is cool.
Very, very nice guy. On our podcast was a very, very insightful about just soccer in general and how things are going in the league. So he was a great guest, and he came on. I would say his first start, if I remember correctly, was the big win over Westchester in the USL.
Oh, nice. Very good.
So, yeah, and he played very well that night. So
nice. Well, good.
And I think, too, like anything else, to be fair to Javi, there's 3 keepers, with some experience on the roster. And you know how it is when things aren't going well. Sometimes you got to flip the coin, I guess, so to speak, as they say. So,
yeah, absolutely. No one's safe when you're not getting results. No one's safe, and so it's funny because even you see some guys who they did nothing wrong, they had a good enough performance, and then they end up, especially at the goalkeeper position. At the goalkeeper, I've said this multiple times on my podcast. I hate goalkeeper competitions. I just love having a guy. And you know what? Yeah, if they have some stinkers, then you think about it. If it's like a reoccurring thing, but it's like, hey, if the guy has 3 or 4 decent games and he has one bad one, it's like, hey, that's just part of being a goalkeeper. There's no safety net. There's no safety net for goalkeepers. A mistake is the most costly position for when it comes to mistakes. So, when Javi kind of got rotated in there or we thought he was going to, I think we've had 4 goalkeepers this season. So we've experienced it.
Yeah.
We've settled on our guy who's actually, we mentioned we don't have that many guys straight out of college, but the current guy that we have starting for us, Jonathan Cleaver. I think he's out of Missouri State. He's out of a Southern school, first professional contract, and he's in a really good job for us. So, we got that one college kid. So
there you go.
Yeah. So no, it'll be a fun game on Saturday. And again, I think it hopefully, obviously, it's not Yankee Stadium, with 70,000 people or the old Giant Stadium where you got, what was this? Oh gosh, why am I blanking on the name? The Giant Stadium. It was just Giant Stadium. Okay,
they were in Yankee Stadium too.
They were in Yankee Stadium. Perfect. So, but hey, it sounds like it's still going to be a cool ground that it would be fun to check out one day. And no, again, I think we are going to wrap this one up, but I do want to say thank you for coming on. I want to have you back on again. That was a fun history lesson for me.
I'll gladly come back on, but what I want to do is get you on our show.
Absolutely.
So I can interview you and I can learn about, you guys and what's going on in Boise.
Perfect. That sounds absolutely. We can definitely do that. Elias and I we're
the next match.
Absolutely. Heck yeah. I think, it's funny how the USL schedule, where teams end up, but I think we'll play each other at least. I think we maybe are set up in September, but no, heck, we can come on whenever. We're always down. Perfect.
It was great.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the time. Sorry, it's a late night for you over there on the East Coast.
Good.
You're used to it. I'm sure.
That's it. Have a great night.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Take care.
Awesome. We'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely. Catch you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode. If you enjoy the show, make sure to like, comment, share with a friend, and make sure you're following the show wherever you listen. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for all updates and future content to come. If you want to help support the pod and get access to exclusive content, early episodes, and bonus perks, head over and check out our Patreon. It truly helps us keep this thing growing. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for being part of the community, and we'll catch you in the next one.